Hey, I'm Romy.
And I'm Nicole. Welcome to the Her Pursuit Pod, where we share our journey of building our business, The Daily Drip, a dynamic media platform that provides content and community for more than 4,000 South Florida female CEOs, founders, business owners, executives, and professionals.
Whether it's through our newsletter, events, or this podcast, our hope is to inspire your next big move and arm you with the tools you need to crush it. So tune in on your drive to work, wind down with us after a long day as we share our journey and the journeys of other remarkable business leaders on Her Pursuit.
Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Her Pursuit. I'm Nicole. I'm co-founder of The Daily Drip, and I'm here today for a very special kickstart to 2025 episode, and I'm joined by Jessica Del Veccio from the Office of Economic Development in Boca Raton, Florida. Welcome, Jess.
Thank you, Nicole. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
I'm glad you're here. Me and Jess go way back. We've been like besties now for going on 5 years.
Yep.
And I remember the first time I met you, you were one of our panelists for one of our International Women's Day, our very first International Women's Day panel event that has now become almost like a household staple annual event in Boca Raton. We've been partnering now ever since.
Not letting you go.
No, and I love it.
It's a great event. It really is. I mean, it's a game changer. It was so necessary for women in business, international women in business, but to have it in Boca Raton, it's the only place for it.
And you've been a great partner and a great ambassador of it and really helping us to make that program what it's become. I mean, it's
grown. It's grown so much.
And so we're excited to do it again this year, but I thought
every year. It's like
we take it up a notch every year. But I was so excited that you were able to come on the podcast and do this episode, because what I really wanted to do for our audience is answer all the questions I know that they're asking. And I know me as a South Florida resident, and I grew up, raised in Boca Raton, went through school in Boca Raton. Now I'm a Broward girl, but Boca is always home. Boca is always home to me. But even just the Tri-County area, it's palpable, the changes that are happening in our backyard. I mean, I feel it as a mother. I feel it as a young businesswoman. I feel it as a business owner. A lot is changing. And I thought, we got to get Jess on the show to talk about, what did we see in 2024? And what do you predict, or what do you forecast? What do you think is on the horizon for us in 2025 and beyond for South Florida? So why don't you kick us off and just talk a little bit about your office in general? Like, what's the role? Because every county has one, right?
Yes.
Or every city has one.
Both. County and cities, yep.
So tell us.
So I started 10 years ago with the city of Boca Raton. So my background is finance. So I was at a hedge fund for 8 years. And prior to that, I was at Smith Barney, dialing on the phone for 8 years. That's how they did it back then, no spring chicken. Master's in finance. I went to Lynn University. I moved to Boca Raton in 1991. So
you went to Lynn University?
Yeah, both of my degrees are from Lynn University. And I love that campus. I love that school.
Oh my God, I had no idea that you went to Lynn.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a good story.
It's true. It's a true story. But I love the smaller campus. I needed that. And they were cutting edge back then. When I went for my master's, I was an older student going back to school, and they allowed the app. They were the first school that I knew of, and maybe in the country, that did the Apple, where you can kind of do some of your courses online. Now it's very common, right, to do your coursework online. Back then it was very cutting edge, very advanced, innovative. So that helped me when I was going to conferences for the hedge fund, and I needed to work and go to school. So it was very good, very versatile. But I was leaving the hedge fund. They were closing down the hedge fund. It was a fundamental trader, and minor issue health-wise, and he wanted to have one of us take over. No one was able to do that. No one had his brain and his mindset. Not everyone can trade. He was a portfolio manager. So they closed the shop, the hedge fund down, and I was looking for work. Actually, they didn't close down yet. I started to interview. And there was a thing called LinkedIn. That was brand new to me.
A thing called LinkedIn.
I was like, I hadn't interviewed in 15 years because I met the portfolio manager when I was at Smith Barney. So I was like, let me launch LinkedIn. Let me get active on here. Let me type up my resume, And I wanted to look just for jobs in Boca Raton in finance, because I didn't want to have to go to West Palm, Fort Lauderdale right out of the gate. I wanted to kind of get my legs under interviewing. And lo and behold, my first interview was with the city of Boca Raton.
They didn't mess around. They knew a good thing.
Yeah, I guess. We'll see. But no one there was no one in my role before.
So it was a new role.
Brand new role. They didn't know what it would look like. I certainly didn't know what it would look like, but I had built businesses at my business at Smith Barney. They gave me a computer. I have a picture of myself sitting at I walked into City Hall where my office is, and I'm sitting in a chair with my phone on the floor. Someone snapped a photo of me. I had no desk.
Oh my God.
I'm very resourceful. You know, I don't let grass grow. I'm like, let's go, keep going. So I launched the office by myself, and there wasn't really Google Maps. I didn't really know how to use that. So I would drive around Boca Raton and take photos of all these. And I was like, wow, there's a lot of companies here. A lot.
And so what is your office dedicated to? So it's the Office of Economic Development. Yeah. What does that mean, and what is the role that it plays?
Sure. Like economic vitality. So primary role is to bring and support the businesses that are in Boca Raton. We recruit new business to come into Boca, and we support the existing businesses from large to small. We have about over 13,000 businesses, which is a lot for a relatively small city with 100,000 residents. We're 29 square miles, so we have 12 million square feet of office space. Wow. People don't realize that. A lot of that is thanks to IBM when they opened the Boca Raton Innovation Campus, which I was at yesterday. Amazing.
Yeah, that campus is really...
It's come a long way. It really is something, and they're still doing a lot. They had about, I guess, a couple years ago, the $320 million came in, so they're using that to upgrade even more of the place. They have a lot of things coming down the pike in that. So we'll talk about some of the infrastructure changes that we're seeing as we're growing as a city. But this is a regional approach, right?
Right.
West Palm, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, we're all seeing the growth, basically since COVID. The growth of South Florida started pre-COVID. Right, we were seeing an influx of people coming down, but COVID was definitely the catalyst of I can work anywhere. I'm getting into the sun.
Yeah,
I'm going to be, and we were open. We being Florida, were open for business. We were able to dine outside. So people that had second homes here were coming down, saying, I'm not coming back to my New York or Connecticut or whatever it was. And now with the tax base here, low taxes here, it's a better play for them financially too. At the time, it was a lifestyle play, like, oh, I can go to dinner, I could be safe, sit outside, social distance, which looking back seems so weird that we had to do that. But in the time, abundance of caution, we did that.
Right.
So a lot of people came into the area, all of South Florida, and now the conversation is you can run your business in South Florida for sure, successfully.
I know. I remember in 2020, I remember seeing an ad, and I can't remember who promoted it, but it was such a good one. It was like, live in the sun, work on the cloud. And it was like really appealing to like knowledge workers and consultants and really anybody who had remote capability. And so I'm curious, like obviously that's probably a big portion of the people you're seeing coming into Boca Raton and just South Florida in general. What are some of those industries, and what are some of those professionals, like the level of person coming in?
We're seeing a lot of finance, Wall Street South, they say that's in West Palm, but our biggest sector is finance in Boca Raton. Many companies have come, not just through COVID, but we've always had a presence. I told you I started my career in Boca Raton at Smith Barney. Yeah. When I started my career at Smith Barney, at Glades and Federal, there were 5 Smith Barney offices. That doesn't include Merrill Lynch, Wells Fargo, all the other. Wow. So we've always been a finance hub in my memory, Right. Plus the conferences that come to Boca, utilizing the Boca Raton Resort, the Boca Raton. It'll always be the resort in my head.
It's so funny. The Boca Resort is like if you grew up in the area, or you're a Boca Raton native, you know it as the Boca Resort. But man, has that gone through such an overhaul. It's gorgeous, the resort. And yeah, they are hosting, like, what are some of the new conferences and things that they're hosting there?
They do a lot of the finance conferences. Even when I was at the hedge fund, we would go to the MFA, I believe it was called. It was an annual conference. So you get a lot of people into town, again, on a lifestyle play. They're coming for business. They're here for a long weekend, or they'll come for the conference, let's just say Monday through Wednesday, and they stay the weekend. So they scope out Boca, and they're like, wow, it's not the Seinfeld Del Boca Vista, right? No longer, right?
Yeah, it's not.
We do have a retirement, a very large retirement demographic, but those are people that aren't sitting and playing shuffleboard, right? They are mentors to our technology sector. They're investors in the companies that are up and coming. These are successful business people. Sure, they're retired, but they're not out of the game.
No,
No.
And I think that's such a good point, because we see a lot of philanthropic growth happening in the area too, and these philanthropic organizations and entities are being founded and led by some of the top business leaders coming out of the Northeast and the Midwest and even California and West Coast.
So those are our three markets.
Yeah.
You just hit them all.
Yeah, and
high taxes. Yeah.
we see them. They're starting philanthropic organizations around infrastructure for down here. They're starting it around education. They're starting it around arts and culture, tech. And it's almost like all the amenities that they're used to, they're making it personal to bring it down here. And they're doing it the philanthropic route, which I think is really interesting. Yeah.
So through COVID, Boca Raton had two schools. One went under like a reconstruction. Addison Meisner was expanded because of the influx of people. It shows we're aging younger. We need bigger schools.
Well, I remember, because at the time,
And Blue Lake.
2020, I was living in Boca Raton, and my son, Sebastian, was about to go into kindergarten. And I remember there was a teacher shortage, and there was a surge in school-age children, particularly elementary. And I remember, I think it was less than a year, they popped up a brand new elementary school.
Blue Lake. The city donated the land and the school was developed. Still a very beautiful school. It's only a few years old. But that is indicative of younger families moving in. Again, going back to the Del Boca Vista, I hate to keep saying that, but we are shedding that just by the families moving in. The children are growing up here. It's really nice to see.
So with that, I'm sure comes infrastructure growth and expansion and needs. I know I can say, just as a millennial, like a younger professional mother, I'm paying attention to, housing prices. I'm looking at my equity growth. I'm looking at, areas that are on the come up that, we're seeing a lot north and west kind of being developed but the housing is still pretty high. So what is in play, or what has the local or tri-county government doing to try to help make sure that we can have more school growth and hospital growth and all the things that we need?
So any city that's growing, any city period, really needs to prioritize investing in infrastructure, because even just roadways doesn't seem like much, right? But when you get to a certain part of town, you're going to sit there, right? Yeah. So we have the new Glades Road, diamond, I forget the name of it, but it's the DDI, I believe they call it. But it kind of routes traffic like a diamond, and it's size 8 or the letter 8. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but it works because I live right off Glades Road. It's really improved the flow of traffic. When you ask about infrastructure or the housing market. So if you owned your home in 2019, you're enjoying this surge in your home values, right? But all the new people coming in, it's very hard for them to afford, from affordability standpoint, to get into a home in the good school district that everyone wants to be in, no matter what town they're in. They want to be in the good school for the benefit of their children. So there's a lot of that going on, a lot of discussions and a lot of planning around projects. I'm not in development services, so I can't really speak to that. I'm corporate. But the city of Boca Raton is definitely implementing things to kind of bring in some more affordable housing and workforce housing. It's not just affordable housing. You want your nurses, cops, firefighters to be able to live in the city they serve.
Correct. Right.
So that's super important, because I've been to other places like Vail, Colorado, and you'll go to a restaurant, not even in COVID, and they have sections that are closed because people aren't coming all the way to Vail to work because they can't afford to live there, and they're getting jobs closer to home. So we don't want to lose that. So that's something that's important to all of South Florida, the affordability factor. But on the flip side, coming from New York with the high taxes and all of this, or coming from California or Chicago, coming to South Florida for a lot of people is still a savings.
Right.
That we don't look at it like that because your house is doubled or whatever it is. But to the people coming in from these other neighborhoods and other states, it's kind of like, okay. I mean, look at the houses they're coming in and knocking down. It's insane. You would live there, but they're like, no. And they knock it down and make it bigger because they have children. they can't, they need more room and more space. So yeah.
And so what are some of the industries? Like I know you said finance was kind of a household thing in Boca and in South Florida, I think. We have these real estate, finance, consulting, there's like the industry, hospitality, like it's kind of like that's what our marketplace looks like down here, right? But have you seen any changes to that, or have any of those, kind of like stakeholder industries evolved in a new way?
Yeah, they evolved, and they're coming down to Boca or South Florida. For us, what we see is a smaller footprint. They're taking a smaller footprint from a leasing perspective, but they're bringing 10 traders or 10 analysts making $250,000 a year as opposed to 30 or 40 or 50. It's a smaller footprint because some people are not working in the office still. It's not everyone's back to the office. Another thing that sets Boca Raton apart in the 12 million square feet of space that I mentioned is we are corporate headquarters. So we have, yes, we have more than half the corporate headquarters in the county. Way more than half are in Boca Raton, because we have the buildings, the inventory, the commercial inventory. We have Canon, Modernizing Medicine, companies that you wouldn't think because they're in buildings, or like we have the park at Broken Sound, right? The park at Broken Sound is it's literally a park of 700 acres of beautiful waterways and tree-lined streets. But in there are buildings, 50,000 square foot, 70,000 square foot buildings that you wouldn't know. Everyone knows ADT and Office Depot.
Right.
Because they're on the outskirts, right?
And they've got signage.
And they've got signage, which the other companies do too, but it's in a 700-acre park. Right. So it's a beautiful place to work. So again, you're coming from another part of the country and you come down to Florida on a day like today, you're taking your lunch outside. There's picnic tables behind every building, Orange Theory. Like there's a lot of companies that are in there. And then the Boca Raton Innovation Campus, which is the original IBM campus, which a lot of people don't realize was where the PC was developed. Yeah. Like literally we're all working on PCs. It was developed here in Boca Raton. And that's 1.7 million square feet of office space. Beautiful office space. It's the size of Town Center Mall.
Wow.
I know. When you put it like that, it's wow. It's massive.
Yeah, you're right, because it's so tree lined and it's so kind of private.
Yes.
And
well, it used to be R&D. Yes. So they didn't want people. Research and development is very secretive.
Correct.
It's very dark. The building used to be dark and like it's like an octagon almost shape when you see the aerial. They've blown out all the walls. It's all glass, floor to ceiling. I mean, it's gorgeous. Really, sitting areas, cafes. It's
so funny. I think when I think of Boca and I think of Palm Beach County, it's not surprising to me, not just because you have the square footage and you have the space, but when you think about, like, I'm trying to put myself in these people's shoes who are relocating. And what a great city to be in, because there's such great schools. It's got such a family-friendly vibe. Plus, you can work in these beautiful locations. You're right across the street from the beach, and then you're a hop, skip, and jump from downtown Fort Lauderdale. You want to go to Miami. The proximity is really nice.
We're like equidistance, right? Boca Raton is equidistance from West Palm and Fort Lauderdale. Right. And now with Brightline, you literally jump on Brightline, you're in Miami for dinner, or you're doing your thing down south and you come home. You can go to, like I did it myself, I went to Art Basel. I never went before. I'm not driving to Miami. I don't know where I'm going. Where am I going to park? I think about all these things. I don't have a good time when I'm thinking about all these things. But I get on Brightline and I'm like, okay. They made it super simple. I'll go check it out. And it was a great way to spend the day. You had mentioned something that struck me when you say you putting yourself in their shoes, right? So it's very hard to move a company. Some people think it just happens organically. Think about trying to move your family. Let's say a family of 4. Moving them to another state. Now multiply that by 10 or 20 or 30 employees.
10 families to move.
Who have a kid in 8th grade, they want to wait till 9th grade. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's very challenging to move a company. But it's very rewarding when they come here. So we got the schools. We have FAU, not just the elementary schools and the middle schools. We have FAU, Lynn University, and Palm Beach State College. Right. So that's a built-in workforce. Right. You come to town, we can find you your employees.
And that's just in Boca.
That's just in Boca,
I've been talking about University of Miami. How could I not plug my alma mater?
Is it you? No, you. I don't even know it.
But I'm just saying, we're just talking Boca. Think about all that you mentioned.
All the assets. Plus the private airport.
Yes,
for
you
executives.
mentioned
I don't
so
fly
much.
private, but they fly private. They want easy access. You know, they have corporate jets.
And you know what else I'm noticing? And because now I'm in Broward. The last 4 years I've been living in Broward. But obviously I'm in Boca weekly, visiting family, friends, clients, you. But I'm also noticing like it almost feels like this kind of like, I don't know what the right word is to say, but it's like this blending of the Tri-County. I feel like the lines of demarcation aren't as hard as they once were. And I can't tell if it's a bright line thing. I can't tell if it's all the newcomers that to them, going to Fort Lauderdale isn't a thing like the way it is for the locals or Miami.
I think it's both.
But I'm noticing in Broward, you know, we're seeing Pura Vida. Yeah. And then I saw there was one in Boca. And I was like, oh my God. And then
Crazy how busy that place is.
But you're seeing these Miami brands, like these strong lifestyle brands that and you
want to be in the market.
They want to be in the market, and they're kind of moving north. Everything is expanding their exposure and bringing their brand to these other markets. There are companies, you know, hotel chains, restaurant groups. You see Major Food Group. Okay, they have Carbone, they have all these hot spots in Miami, and now they just basically took over the Boca Raton Resort. And now there's like incredible restaurant concepts all managed by Major Food Group. You see like New York based or like Tri-County based brands that opened in Miami.
Their customers are here.
Yeah.
Right? So they understand that they want to be where their customer base is, like whether it be H&H Bagel that just recently opened in Boca Raton. Yes. You know, they're realizing the influx of people coming to Florida are from their existing market. And they're like, well, they already like our stuff. Like, it's a very smart play. Correct. They have a built-in customer base once they open their door. Right?
And I think just from like, I got to imagine from your perspective and your office's mission and role, what a great way to make South Florida feel like home than to go and build relationships with these lifestyle brands and help bring them to our market so that these people that are coming from Chicago can have a little bit of home. It starts to make South Florida feel a little bit like home, because I got to imagine that's kind of like a shock to the system, you know?
Yeah, I imagine it is. I know when I moved here, it was a shock, you know, and I was only 17. But I think, first of all, I have the best job in the world. Getting to work with the community and the business community and new people coming to the area, it's exciting to show them art because their perception is different than their reality, right? So they perceive Boca from watching TV or reading the newspaper or flying over and looking at websites.
Or visiting their parents.
Right. Parents, grandparents coming to a conference. They're not really on the ground seeing how the locals live, which is a little different. Just like when you go to Italy, you want to go to the restaurants that all the locals are at, not the one with the flashing signs, right? So it's that same kind of feeling. So we give tours and we get to show them our city. And it's like you have such pride because you see them like, and you hear them, wow, I didn't know Meisner Park was like this. I didn't know Town Center. The hotels that you mentioned blurring the lines. We drive them to Del Rey, which, you know, 9 years ago, you'd be like, you know what I mean? Like there's a line, you don't go through there. But now we're showing them the lifestyle on Atlantic Avenue. And look what you could do at night. There's, you know, hundreds of restaurants to check out, you know, because you can work from anywhere. So we don't even show space anymore. I'm not showing office space anymore. We're showing lifestyle, right?
Now you're not showing office space anymore.
I used to go through, wear my sneakers, show them with the brokers, we'll walk through building after building. No, it's totally different. We're showing them where their kids will go to school. We're doing tours of schools for their children. We're getting them in touch with the school board and doing those types of things. We're showing them lifestyle plays of food, drink, beverage, the Boca Raton, you know, the airport, another asset. A lot of people don't realize there's customs there and they can, you know, go international. It's relatively new. It's about 7 years in. And you do tour some space, but it used to be the big chunk of things. And now it's just a small piece of, well, I got to find an office space about 10,000 square feet. Right. Another thing we're seeing is residential real estate agents. Never used to work with them. there was really no need. I never had any collaborations with them.
That's interesting.
Yeah. People would find I would work with the commercial real estate agents, real estate brokers, and the person would work with a real estate agent that their friend, family, cousin worked with. And now, since COVID, people are coming for the housing first and then want to bring their business. So we're working more with the residential real estate agents, which is new for us.
Oh my gosh, do you hear that, real estate agents listening? Because we have a ton. Like, that's one of our bigger demographics of our community.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so our community is primarily consultants, right, of varying disciplines. But then right under that is finance and accounting, law, and real estate. So our audience demographic for the Daily Drip looks very much like South Florida looks, right? And I think that's important for the real estate community to hear, that do you have a relationship with your local Office of Economic Development? If you're in Boca, Del Rey, or Palm Beach County, you need to know Jess. And Jess is one of our thought leaders, so you need to connect with her. But also there's the BDB Palm Beach, which is basically your role, but for the county level.
Big.
And every county and every city has this. So if you're in Broward or you're in Miami, that's important for you to start building these relationships and these partnerships.
Because the office will connect the people that they're working with to resources as well. It's not just finding office space and touring the community. Now that they're in their space, they need workforce like we talked about, but there's low to no cost resources to business owners that most people don't realize are out there.
Really? Like what?
Like Career Source of Palm Beach County. They help you find employees. They help you upload resumes. They do all of this stuff for you as a state-funded program. SBDC is a small business development center. They do access to capital, so SBA loans, low-rate loans, things like that.
What about grants?
Same thing, SBDC. It's called the Small Business Development Center. We have it at FAU and in Boca, but they're in Florida-wide, just like Career Source. SCORE is the retired executives that I was talking about. They give their mentorship for free and time to help you get next level for entrepreneurs. Another thing I'd like to touch upon is Boca Raton. I mentioned the PC computer. We are known for technology and innovation, and we're bringing that all back. We have the Research Park at FAU. We have FAU Tech Runway. We have 1909. We brought them in from West Palm. So these are like
1909. We love the girls at 1909.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, they're great.
They're great. Yeah. So we're funding them. So we, out of my office, we give grants to those three entities right now to foster the spirit of entrepreneurship, the ideas and everything, cultivating that so that we can get these brains to stay in Boca Raton and build businesses and widgets and all the things. So those three we support right now financially, and we have two more coming down the pike being, they're not approved yet, but HEY, which is the Hispanic Entrepreneurship Initiative, we will be funding, assuming that still has to go in front of council for vote. And the Adams Center, the FAU Adams Center, does incredible work with veterans programs and women programs, business owners, again, access to grants and programming. So we just really want to build this ecosystem, the startup ecosystem, and do as much as we can. We can't, as a city, invest in startups, right? It's very risky, and we use taxpayer dollars. But this is our way to say, you're the experts. We're going to fund what you're doing and your initiatives as best as we can. We don't give a ton of money, but it shows the level of interest. And then we're cultivating this together. Like I said about 1909 with Shayna, she's killing it up in West Palm.
They're doing a great, if you're not familiar with 1909, it's a nonprofit co-working space for startups that also provides a ton of resources and programming to help startups succeed. And they have a beautiful space up in West Palm, but I'm really happy to hear they're expanding to Boca and in the way that they are.
Last month we signed that.
That's really exciting.
It's exciting.
So we've talked a lot about all the ways you're bringing newness and supporting those new businesses and people in our community. But you just talked a lot about the different programs that are available to any business owner that's at the local level. And I love how you called out real estate. But I would love to kind of like end this episode talking to our locals, because this episode's really dedicated to them kind of learning what's happening in their backyard. And if you had to give a piece of advice to a local business owner about how they should be thinking about your office or what they should be looking for or opportunity that you think they might be leaving on the table that you think's like the best kept secret, what would it be?
Don't be afraid to reach out. My face is on the city website. My email is on the city website and the phone number. We want to be accessible. You know, the city of Boca is very business open for business, right? And I think people hesitate to reach out because they think government, how is the city of Boca Raton going to help me? But there's a lot just by the resources we talked about, you know?
And I think we just scratched the surface.
Yeah, because it's all about connection. So the one thing I love about Boca Raton, being a resident for so long, is there's a sense of community there. Everyone knows everyone, right? It's 100,000 people. 100%. It's a sophisticated city with a small town feel and a thriving business community, right? So who wouldn't want to live there?
Yeah, and I have to just endorse what you just said, because even we can look at our relationship. Yeah. The Daily Drip was a startup 4 years ago. We're going into year 4 now. Small business, local kind of entity, local community owner, right? And you were very available and accessible, not just to participate in our first International Women's Day panel event, but then kind of put your arms around Romy and I, around the Daily Drip, and around that initiative and say, how can I support you? You guys have been supporting, promoting that program, helping us with sponsors, helping us get the word out and get a lot of the business community in the room, helping us bring the resources to light. And I think that was a really good tip to say, because you might be intimidated or you might see this big office and you see these people and you feel like they're at a distance, but they really do want to meet you. Yeah. They want to have the relationships with the local business scene, and they really do want to support in any way that they can. And you definitely have supported us tremendously.
That to me is the most rewarding part of the work, right? Because at my core, I'm a business person, right? I've always been a business person myself, so I can see and talk. We've talked numerous times about things, but we do that with everyone that we get to meet with. You know, it's really that important. And knowing everyone it took years to get to know the people in the community I work in. Years. It doesn't happen overnight that I know what room you should be in, or maybe you want to go to this event or talk about this.
Oh yeah, the guidance you've been able to give me, not just in Boca Raton, but then helping me show what the landscape looks like, so that I could take that information and apply it to Broward. A lot of what I learned from you, I was able to translate in Broward, and now we're starting to apply the same systems and processes and strategies to Miami-Dade County, because we are a tri-county community. But it's been so helpful just from a guidance perspective, the introductions and the network and the connections, and then just the support of the things that we do. So I thank you for that.
Well, I thank you for reaching out.
And look at us now.
It's true. It's that simple. It's a phone call, and it's only an initial phone call. And sometimes, you know, it develops like this. Other times it develops into a big company moving here. And other times it just has someone who wants access to capital, and we just put them with the SBDC or something like that. But we're always looking to help. You know, it helps Boca as a whole. It helps everyone. A strong economy helps the whole region, and your regional approach. And things that you're doing that are duplicatable, that's how you scale.
Correct.
It's simple, but it's not easy.
No. You know what it takes? It takes being a people person.
Grit.
It takes grit. It takes red wagons. You and I have dragged red wagons all over town, full of our props and signs and peddling, our mission. But I think, it does take a lot of grit, and it takes a lot of strong relationship building skills, because that's really what I've learned in my 4 years is it's the relationships you have and the way you make people feel that they remember you and they want to help you. Yeah. And they want to connect you and they want to support your initiatives. And so I think, I'm excited to see what's on the horizon for you, your office, for Boca, and for South Florida in general. I think this is one of the most exciting times.
Robust. The whole region.
And I almost feel like it's a once in a lifetime. Like, I don't think ever before have we seen like such a palpable light switch flip change almost overnight where we can kind of feel the ground shifting below us.
Exciting times.
And so for the business leaders listening, never before has there been a more critical time for you to get to know Jess if you're in the Palm Beach County area, or the Jesses of the world, right?
Right.
Go find your local Office of Economic Development and start making friends. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for this great conversation, all the tips, and we will see you all on another episode of Her Pursuit. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Her Pursuit.
You can listen to new episodes every other Wednesday on Spotify or watch us on YouTube. Stay in the loop on all our virtual and in-person events, read our latest articles, and catch new episodes by subscribing to our free weekly newsletter.
Check out the episode notes for more details, and we'll see you here on our next episode of Her Pursuit.